Yes, sir. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Hubbardston Board of Selectmen will be conducted by remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town website. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via Zoom. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the town's website a comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting.
All right, thank you. I don't see anybody here besides us five as attendees. Anything else prior to this meeting give you any idea or inkling that there might be somebody here for open session?
No, sir. We have some time to guess, but obviously they're not here yet, so I don't see anything.
All right, sounds good. So we'll move on to announcements. We'll start off, I guess, with the Hubbardston Light Fight. Katie, you want to give us a status update on where we're at in that?
Yeah, we have gone through 2 out of the 3 weekends of the light fight. So if you haven't caught it yet, you have one more weekend to officially check out all the entries. There are 28. There's lists online and a map online. There's also a list and a paper map located at the one-stop shop, aka Mr. Mike's in town. People are coming and checking them out in the weekdays. I have somebody right now driving down my driveway. I'm watching them drive down to check out the lights. It might be better for townies to do it during the week when there's not big lines, because my driveway is usually jam-packed with cars, as a few of you can attest to that went down my driveway this weekend and probably got trapped for a while.
Couldn't get out.
But it's all in good fun, and so far I've gotten nothing but positive feedback, minus the lack of cell service. That's the only drawback I have received so far at all, and that's the usual drawback, but hopefully we'll have that solved for next year. So, but anyway, you got one more weekend to vote and check them all out, and then we will announce the winners. Right now I have 340 votes cast last time I checked. So, and they're rolling in every day. So get those votes in.
Yeah, we went Saturday night. Took us probably an hour and a half. I think we probably hit 25 or so of the 28, maybe even all of them. I'm not sure. I got confused as we were navigating in the rain and fog, and it was fun. We actually went to Gardner Cinema first, got a bunch of popcorn, pretzels, nachos, and just drove around to all the different places. And we were not alone. It was just people following other people, stopping. I mean, it was safe and fun and whatnot. What'd you think, Eds?
It was really good.
Oh yeah, that's your contribution?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was fun because then I wasn't on my phone.
Oh yeah, nice. All right.
I loved your cows.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, good job. You're done.
Okay, bye. I'm gonna shower.
Sounds good. Well, great. I mean, it's what a great response so far. I hope a bunch of other people take advantage of it. My wife's had a few of her local friends, not from Hubbardston, but from other towns, asking about the map and stuff. So I think it's just gaining momentum, which is great to have that article, which was also an awesome article in the Globe too, which you didn't mention, which is a huge deal for us. The only other time I can recall is when we had devastation from the 2008 ice storm. So yeah. This is way better.
Yes.
Yeah, right. So anyway, okay. Anyone else have anything else on the light fight?
Yeah, I was able to bring my family on Friday night, which was a lot of fun. And I did also get stuck in Katie's driveway, which was great. I was going to stop and say hi, but there was no way that was possible. The cars at each, the big go big or go home on the back roads were lined up, which is great. And we ordered pizza from Pizza Palace, and it was an hour wait to get our pizza. There was probably 25 cars idling in the parking lot waiting for their food, which is one of the reasons why we do the light fight, right? Is to bring people to the town and support the businesses. So all that was great. The Pizza Palace was stressed, but delivering delicious food and happy about the way everything went. So it was great to see. My family had a blast. We all voted. So good luck to everyone who's competing.
All right, one more thing. So Katie, I don't know if you saw this too, but so we had kind of 3 of us because of the cell phone coverage too, but on Apple Maps, it actually showed leading up and leaving your house was all red on the road, which shows like traffic wise. I was like, we were getting close, and in advance, usually it's like the highway, right? Where you see that.
Yeah.
But it was all,
Yeah.
it was,
No, that's my house.
yeah, it was. All right, great. Okay. Well, moving on. So the community survey, Ryan.
Yeah, so we tested out the survey with a few people in town, vetted it with the planning board, the economic development committee, and I feel like we have a good collaborative draft. And gonna go through it tomorrow early in the morning and get that out tomorrow. So we'll be fielding the survey starting tomorrow over the New Year's and probably into the first week of January, just to gather as many responses as possible. So I think we're getting a lot of good data from that and a lot of good decision-making points. So people can look for that in the future. We're going to send out a mailing and continually push it out on social media. So I feel like we'll get a good response.
Okay. All right, sounds good. So that's it for announcements. Move on to presentations, which we have on here. We have the 5-year financial forecast, fiscal year 22 through 26. You want to just sort of explain it first before we sort of get into it a little bit, if you don't mind, for people who might be looking at it for the first time?
Sure. So the point of a financial forecast is to paint a picture for decisions coming in the upcoming budget season, and it's a little bit more than in the regular budget process. You really look at the next year and how things are going to impact both the budget, the tax rate, and service levels. The financial forecast tries to go beyond just 1 year, project things out 5 years conservatively to see what might be coming or decisions that might need to be made based off that. And we've expanded it over the last couple of years to include analysis of debt and town reserves and other financial indicators of strength or weakness. So the point of the forecast is, and why we do it now in December, is to lay the groundwork for the thought processes going into the budget season. This year will be on FY22.
All right.
Get okay. Just got to move your faces so I can see. All right, so this is, as I stated in the beginning, and just in summary, a decision-making tool, just one of many that we use to try and help make decisions. And the topic areas are how we construct it, comments on revenue, expenditure, debt, reserves, recommendations to the Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee and residents, and then a quick summary. So methods, we've been gathering data and adding to this forecast, or I have been for the last 3 years. The data comes from FY11 to FY21 for this forecast, and it is very much trend-based, which you will see. Our assumptions are based off 3, 5, and 10-year averages. So we take a 3, a 5, and a 10-year look and then average that all together to try and get as accurate a picture as we can and remove some of the outliers. Some years you have just scenarios that probably aren't going to repeat themselves. So we take that out to try and give it a more realistic feel. And then it's intentionally conservative. So if you would ask, why do we predict a deficit and then get a balanced budget every year? It's, well, A, we get creative and try and fit things into certain buckets, but we also forego some of these increases or shift them in different ways to make it work. So this is conservative on purpose. And the idea is to eventually get to a balanced budget and its impact on the next 5 years. All right, revenue. So we know that our revenue comes primarily from tax increases, and that's 2.5% is allowed by Mass General Law. And new growth, which was very low last year, which was one of our revenue problems, will go back above, I think, 30,000 this year. So this model is still continuing to predict a 30,000 per year growth level, which is right in line with 10-year averages for Hubbardson. For the first couple of years of my time here, the new growth numbers were in the 60s, which helped. The idea being we need to continue to invest in ways to get people to either move to the town to build or to attract reasonable businesses in order to make sure our new growth numbers continue to go up, because it's the only thing we have besides taxes. Okay, some of this stuff is the same as last year. So we're trying to more accurately predict local receipts, which you'll also hear in the audit. And then State aid, we're continuing a conservative increase in state aid, knowing full well that COVID's impacts are changing financial pictures. So rather than try and predict what COVID's going to do, we're continuing with a more long-term approach to predicting revenue, knowing that FY22 is going to look potentially different. But we did really think that FY21 was going to change drastically because of COVID, and it didn't. It was level funded, and we didn't get increases, but we didn't have the massive reductions that we thought. So somewhere in the middle is probably what we're going to be looking at. And here are FY22 revenue projections. So you'll notice the big thing on this slide is free cash. So we use free cash to help fund our operating budget. So without using free cash, our new revenue for FY22 is about 155,000 based off this model, or a 2.5% increase in revenue. And if you're thinking on the expense side, just to forecast, about 1% of a school assessment growth at QRSD is about $50,000. So if you put it in that context, you can see new revenues are not plentiful. Okay, these are some of the assumptions we used. The 2.5% for tax levy, local receipts going up about 1%, and state aid going up about 2%. We were averaging 4% on state increases, so 2% was conservative. And as I said, now it might be a level funding that would be more appropriate for a one-year budget discussion. And as you can see, revenue forecasts for the town are flat. So there's not large increases except that 2.5 on those big tax lines you see. Everything else is pretty level, which means if you're going to inject anything into the financial model in terms of new revenues, it's going to have to come from new growth or something else like solar or marijuana or big business investment. Those are the only things that are going to change this revenue picture. Okay, on the expenditure side, and we'll get to the assumptions on expenditures, but based off this model, education now makes up 71% of the projected budget in FY22. QRSD makes up Quabbin Regional School District, for those who don't love acronyms like me, comprises 63% of the budget. Monty Tech comprises the other 7%, and both of them have a little bit extra, which accounts for the 71%. So if you grow these budgets at more than 3 to 4% annually, then it will just trigger an operational override at some point, perhaps as soon as this year, based off of revenue. That's not a scare tactic. That is just the truth. Given that 71% of the budget is going up by more than 4% annually, there's just no more room to cut your way out of the problem. So level funding the budget does help. We have put in control measures. You'll see we have a less dire outlook than we did in the past, but there's only so much left to cut. And if you want to go the cut route, then it's going to mean making modest or less than adequate service levels at the town department levels. Really, the only thing we have left to cut is some regional efficiencies that maybe we could gain, or people. This just shows the due diligence of 10-year look backs on expenses. I'll give you a second to digest some of this. So Monty Tech, if you look back in the last 10 years, there were massive increases in Monty Tech until about FY18, and then dramatic cuts to include the biggest one, which was last year. That's based off enrollment on that side. So the 10-year average for Monty Tech is a 6% increase, but the 3-year is a negative 6% increase. So Monty Tech continues to be an interesting look back. Dispatch is because of adding different towns and changing the service level of dispatch and trying to control the budget on the expense side, it has been relatively flat, but that can't continue forever. Like all services, costs do go up. Quabbin's averages in the short term are around 4%, the long term around 3.5%, and total averaging all three, you get about 3.7. So that's that 4% growth factor. Insurance, big savings were made. This was because of some work Rayanne did in FY19, which reduced competitively bid our insurance and reduce the costs. So those are going to start to climb now. as we got a pretty good deal a few years ago, and you can expect to add about 3% to that moving forward. But the long-term look back is very low because of the work that Rayanne did there. And then on the, I'm assuming it was Rayanne. I'm sure there were many other people involved, but she was the one that I see in the reports about it. And then on the retirement side, we got whacked pretty hard last year at 8%. The year before, our assessment went down. So that continues to work on the long-term stability problem in the retirement. We continue to have to add money to make up for monies that were lost in the last couple decades, which will continue for another 15 years. And then you should see your retirement assessments start to go down, or at least have a slower growth. But those catch-up payments are continuing to blow that budget up.
Just a comment while you've got this screen up here, Ryan. So, 5 major points of interest, obviously, here. And I think it's just, important to say, that we, I don't mean the board necessarily, I just mean the town has done everything possible within these timeframes. I think it's reflected here in reducing to the maximum extent possible, starting from the left to right. So Monty Tech, we just have so little control because we're one of so many towns that are part of it. It's just we don't have much of a voice, and it has to do with enrollment and how many Hubbardston students go, and none of that's predictable. So I think we've just kind of had to deal with that. Dispatch, you've been great on dispatch and holding them to, obviously we see some increases there and there's things out of our control, but if you look at the last few years, definitely going down. That's because of work. Quabbin, I'd be interested to see what those percentages look like on the first shot to us every year on the right side. I doubt it's 3.8, 1.9, 1.3, 5.6. It's probably more like 8, 11, 14, down. So again, that's a lot of work. Insurance, you just talked about there, where maybe it was something we weren't really thinking about, 6, 7 years ago, but then somebody took a keen interest to it, or groups of it to get that down. And then retirement, that's another one that's kind of like Monty Tech. We don't have a lot of control over that either, without, just sort of making sure we fully understand it. So just saying it out loud, I think we're doing everything we can on these major items here. Every year we know which ones they are, and we're, doing what we can to reduce them.
Those are great points. The expense side, hey, there's some that assume that government is inefficient. I don't think that the data here shows that it is. There's been, as you said, a tremendous amount of work to shave expense costs. It's just when revenue goes up at 2.5% and your expense goes up at 4%, eventually you run out of things to cut. So the next step would be service levels for the town. And depending on what your interests are, that could be education, public safety, town hall services, right? Those are the next things impacted. Road maintenance is another big one. And we're doing our best to make sure we're delivering that high quality services with less and less. Eventually something has to give. And that's, again, not a scare tactic. It's just painting a picture. So some assumptions. So what we did is we took last year's budget and then assumed growth patterns over the next 5 years. And these are the growth levels that we assumed. So personnel going up somewhere between 2 and 3%. We took the high end. That has been traditionally the increases in employee costs over time. Employee support is something that can be controlled. We assumed at 2.5%, which most service levels grow at. For this model, we put the Quabbin Regional School conservatively at 5% and Monty Tech at 5%, again, to account for any potential increases. One year there was an 8 number in there, which would absolutely devastate the budget. Last year it was relatively level funded and we still had a 3% increase, which means the state thinks we should pay more even when the school level funds its budget. So that's not a good indicator moving forward. Health insurance is going to rise, in my opinion, based off everything we read at the municipal level, big time after COVID. So you can expect that to increase pretty steeply. Retirement's not going down anytime soon for the next 15 years. So that's at 6%. And then everything else we've tried to tie to reasonable service increase levels, which is 2.5%. So based off of that, here are the assumed expenditure projections. So this is just if we took all those assumptions and said we're going to apply it to next year's budget without any thoughtful analysis or cuts. There is analysis there, but thoughtful moving of money to make things balance, this is what next year's budget would look like. And you can see, education makes up a large chunk of that. Okay, in here, you can just see growth patterns. So that large middle item is, again, education, and the everything else is relatively flat. That's how we're projecting it, 2 to 3 to 6% for a couple items, and then you see the schools increasing at 5% each year, and what that does to the budget. All right, just got to move some things out of the way here so I can see. This is assuming about a 4% growth in the budget. Okay, so the deficit, this is really what town officials want to know, is if you continued out this model, what would happen long term. So next year's deficit, it appears to be about 225,000, and projected out to 2026, it's around 900,000. So we've been using free cash in our operating budget, which means if we did that again, the actual deficit in this year's budget would be 125,000. Assuming the school lines go up at 5%, you can see how we might be able to balance that. If you decided not to use free cash, you'll see that there's no real way to attack this deficit. And it's something that we have to do because we cannot continue to rely on one-time funds, because eventually they're not there. And then you have just a really bad year. Okay, and this just shows you how the deficit grows over time with these percentage increases in expenses and relatively flat increases in revenue. This bottom line here is the deficit, and you just see that continue to grow and grow. Okay, switching gears a little bit and talking about debt. So balance is important. Most households keep some debt. They would call it good debt, whether it's for their house or for different projects that they need to fund, but can't fund just straight cash. However, you want to keep your, I'm not preaching to anyone, but you want to try and keep your debt to your needs while fighting the temptation to borrow for wants. And the town's done a pretty good job with that over time, and we have a pretty good policy in place now. So we're trying to set the debt target at 2 to 5%. Annually, we've been around 3% of the operating budget, and that's kind of where you want to stay. And it sounds funny to say you want to continue your debt in some ways, but if you use any decreases in debt to fund operating costs, those operating costs will then go up at the 4%, 6%, 3% level that you've seen before, and eventually you eat away that savings. And then what you really lose is the ability to fund any needs, like eventually you will need a fire truck, or you will need an ambulance, or you will need to renovate a building. And without that borrowing capacity, you're just never going to be able to build it back into the operating budget. So if you can keep the levels around 2 to 3%, and you have the ability to fund your own long-term capital without having to go for debt exclusions, etc. Now, some towns choose to go the other way, and they say, if we need something big, we're just going to ask the residents to support it outside the budget. And that's certainly something to consider, and town officials can kick that one around. But you can see it's a political problem that is only shown here in a metric way. So what I'm talking about, if you prefer it graphically, is in 2023, the roads project comes off the books. It's about $180,000 of borrowing in the operating budget, and you see a steep decline. Now, you could use that savings to solve some of the structural budget deficit that we were talking about, and that's certainly a strategy that many people use, but you wouldn't be able to borrow again at that level, because once you use that for operating, you're never going to get it back. So this is a big decision point for the town. It's coming in 2 years, what to do about the long-term capital needs that you have and the structural budget deficit, and how this graph fits into that. And it's something the CIPC has been looking at pretty heavily in this round, your capital improvement planning committee, about recommendations, and they'll have some for you in this next capital plan. The recommendations center around focusing on using the borrowing power the town has to pay for the eventual need of a fire truck and an ambulance, rather than to rely on that for the tax base in order to potentially solve some of the building problems with an override attempt. Okay, and this is the numbers version of that graph. So you see we're projecting about 2.87% of debt in the next year's budget, and that drops off pretty steeply in the coming years, almost to less than 1% in FY26. Okay, and reserves. Reserves are something town administrators always want to talk about, and people always talk about borrowing. And why does it matter? It matters because these borrowings that I just mentioned, any borrowing the town wants to do in future is directly tied to your bond rating, and bond rating agencies look directly at things like reserves. Also, reserves are important for things like pandemics or recessions, which we're facing right now. So having a stable reserve, and this town focusing on reserves for a long time has allowed the town to comfortably navigate this pandemic despite some serious financial challenges. If we need the reserves, they're there, and that's what they're for. They're for rainy days. So towns' policy-driven targets, meaning what policy says the town should have, is 5% in your stabilization or rainy day fund, 1% in your capital stabilization or your rainy day capital fund, 5% free cash generation, which is about $500,000, and a total reserve each year of about 10 to 11%. Okay, the summary of the reserves currently have our stabilization at 4.31%, which is good. It's not 5%, but it's a good number. Well within the best practice recommendation of 3 to 5%. Municipal capital has been used recently, and I don't disagree with that decision, because we also have to catch up on old capital that was deferred. So using a fund like that is great for that, and you'll probably see a recommendation this year to use a little bit of again to help the capital budget in FY22. Just focusing here in this recommendation about prioritizing stabilization and then capital stabilization, and then road stabilization with any monies you have above and beyond reasonable capital expenditures with your free cash. In order to hit all the targets you have, you would need to invest $200,000 in reserves by FY26, and that's shown here. Here are the current reserve levels projected over time. This is if you add nothing to it. You can see how the reserve levels dip over time because of the growth of the budget. How that matters is, in order to maintain the target levels, you would need an initial investment of $100,000, and then you need to invest about $25,000 to keep pace each year. So that's in a perfect world. Of course, you would do all these things. These savings priorities are fighting against use of free cash in the operating budget. They're fighting against the need to fill holes because of increased assessments, and of course, capital requests from departments who desperately need capital.
Can you go back to the previous slide, please?
Sure.
Can you explain the reserve target and actual projected again, what you were just talking about, and slower?
Okay, sorry. So stabilization, if you were to put 5% of the operating budget into stabilization for FY22, that number would be 489 or almost 490,000.
Okay.
What we actually have in stabilization is 422.
Yep.
So we're at 4.31% of the operating budget. And that's done for capital stabilization, free cash generation, and then total reserves. So going into town meeting, we'd want to see 11% of our operating budget into savings accounts. And right now we're at 8%, which is a good number. I don't want to sound like an alarmist. It's just, if you did nothing with reserves over the next 5 years, that number would be less than 7%, which is no longer good in FY26.
Got it. Thank you.
This is shown here numerically what you would need to keep to their target levels. So a big initial investment, which maybe you just do a little, maybe you can't do any in that year. Eventually you need a big influx, and then it's easy to maintain. People know this from their household budgets too. You should be putting a certain amount aside for a rainy day, and then you got to keep up with it over time, or else it dissipates.
And the problem is 100,000 of the free cash goes to the operating budget, which basically creates the problem.
Yes. And even if you didn't use it in the operating budget, there'd be a lot of pressure to use it somewhere else on a road or capital. Those are all important decisions too. So you can see how it's a balance. There's just not enough resources for everything that needs to be done.
Yep.
All right, so recommendations. This is useless without some recommendations. So continue to improve relationships with the schools and other departments and really demonstrate how the structural deficit and the growth problems grow over time. That's important as people make decisions, because I tell my departments, if you're not advocating for stronger service levels and for your employees, et cetera, then you're not doing something right, because we want the best of everything. But there's only so much that we can give. So if people understand the big picture, they're still going to fight for their piece of the pie, but hopefully they can see, a reasonable compromise is necessary in order to keep the town functioning well across the board. So none of these decisions, and you've heard a lot about education, say that we shouldn't invest in education or continue to support our schools. Those drive new growth numbers, our ability to attract business, and 25% of our residents are school-age children. It's not that we don't want to invest in everything. It's that you just need to look at it across the spectrum and see which department needs more, which department needs less, et cetera. So a transparent budget process also helps, because eventually you're going to need to ask for more money. And I believe, my personal feeling is, the only way to do that is to just be upfront and share everything you have and be as transparent as possible, and hope that folks will see that and then make a decision based off of what they see. Got to continue to explore ways to increase revenue. That's grants, regionalization, efficiencies in the staff, economic development, all things that we're working on, all those fun side projects we're doing, all really attack this structural deficit. And that's kind of the point of all of it. Minimize this impact on the taxpayers. And then my recommendation is to tie all of these decisions to these forecasts, continue to look at things like borrowing and how to use that money to solve some problems and fix some of these issues that you have long-term. And this is a basic summary, just saying that there's less revenue than you need for your expenses. Decisions have to be made on where to prioritize the little bit of revenue that we have, and have to continue on focusing on those revenue generating projects and ideas in order to keep service levels the same and Hubbardston looking the way that residents have expressed they want it to look. Short term, FY22, a very limited growth budget is going to be necessary. We would know that anyway because of the forecast, but given COVID's impact on the budget, it's going to be doubly important this year. And it's already been expressed through your budget goals to the departments who are heeding the guidance in their budget requests that we're getting now. And that is the financial forecast. So just see if anyone has any questions.
No, great. I mean, that's so valuable. So, it's hard to not just focus on big numbers and think doom and gloom. But, we do know that we work hard constantly and annually to make it so that the line doesn't look linearly up like that. So that is going to help. And you talked about it earlier with projects that are probably in the works relative to marijuana or solar or other things we don't know about that are going to help. So it's accurate in the way it's presented, and I think adequately conservative. So that's the way to do it. Okay. Sounds good. Thanks, Ryan. All right, so we have a couple items that look like they're supposed to have some other attendees, right? We have the next would be 4A, which is the Williamsville Pond Dam update, which I don't see Taryn on. Was he going to come?
So he had reached out to me over the weekend and said that he had spoken to you, Dan.
Yeah.
And he'd also spoken to, and I'll give a quick update so people know what we're talking about. He also spoke to the Conservation Commission and wanted to do more work before bringing it to this board.
That's right.
But the basic issue is the Williamsville Pond Dam is failing. For those who've been to that area, it's a beautiful pond. A lot of residents live around the pond and use it. The dam is owned by DCR, which is a state organization, and they are not going to fix the dam. So this is an intentional decision. They are not fixing dams anywhere in the state. They're letting them go and letting the land that they own return to its natural state, as they say. So
It's actually Division of Fisheries and Wildlife, just so
I'm
you know.
sorry, wrong one. And I spoke with the agency, the representative from the agency, and this is their policy across the board. They don't buy any more land with dams on it, and they're not going to fix any of the dams. So the Williamsville Pond residents tried to fix it themselves, and then have been working with the state to figure out, what's allowed and what's not there, since it is state land. So they are looking for an alternative solution. One thing that is possible that I'm not recommending here, I'm just bringing up what's being discussed, is the town could take that piece of land, and then we would inherit the dam problem. And also we would have control over it. So we'd be able to make that decision. It's about $1 million repair. And I know Dan does this for a living, but that's what I was told, is it's about $1 million repair. So that's probably not a good idea for us to take on that problem, but there are potentially some options about giving it back to the residents, et cetera. So we're kicking around these ideas and trying to help the residents solve this problem, knowing that there's not a lot of good answers. So he was going to come talk to you about that. That's what we're dealing with in the Williamsville Pond area, and we've been pretty engaged with the residents there to try and take care of them.
Yeah, so let me just add real quick. So, yeah, I don't even really know how this is all going to work out from my standpoint yet. So I do this work for work. And I know the dam very well. I was asked by Division of Fish and Wildlife 4 or 5 years ago to come and consult on the repair. This is, it's not a job I could ever bid on because I'm in this position, but I know the engineers very well who have recommended different repairs and or removals of it as well. So I popped onto the ConsCom meeting because I saw it on the agenda a couple weeks ago, and Rick gave me some time to talk about that and basically state that. And Taryn from Mission E4 was on, and I gave him a little bit of consultation on maybe his options, which Ryan was just talking about. And I wasn't advocating for it, and I'm off the cuff against it for the town for creating that liability. But an idea is, and I think that's what Taryn's looking into, is potentially the town could receive it, and then in the same time, in parallel with that, a community such as a trust that owns property on the pond itself could get together and be the funding source for repairs. So the town would be the mechanism of ownership. There's a lot of stuff that would have to get worked out, and we have committed nothing to ourselves. But I'm just letting you guys know that there is a mechanism where the town could be sort of the receiver of that from the state, and a trust, private trust, could be set up to be able to fund what needs to get done for the dam itself. So anyway, I think Taryn, what he's doing, and I recommend it to him, is I don't know all the answers. He doesn't know all the answers, and even the state doesn't. So for him to find an engineer, pay an engineer, he knows he's going to have to pay for it, to be able to give him options or them options on what his paths might be. So I guess when he gets enough information, he'll probably come back to us. Eventually, I may have to, I don't know if I'm going to have to recuse myself. I don't feel like I've got any really, professional skin in this, because I just don't. There's no benefit for me. I'd have no problem talking to the Attorney General's office to sort of explain the situation to him. And I think it's probably helpful if I'm involved, but that's just sort of full disclosure where things are at.
Now, a trust can't just take it, like instead of the town getting, like it can't go from the fisheries straight to a trust.
It can't.
No.
And to be honest, that's that would definitely be the easiest thing to do, without a doubt. The real reason why that can't happen in this case, because Katie, it's a good question. It might be able to in another. There are 2 dams. One is owned by somebody else. In Barry. I forget the name of the entity in Barry.
Oh, in Barry.
So yeah, so I believe it's an Dr. Allen's trust, some sort of he's on the school committee, some former entity owns this other dam. So to get the permit to be able to bring a dam up to compliance with the Office of Dam Safety, which is a totally separate entity, you can't just fix one dam on a pond. Because if you fix one dam, they won't give a permit to do that. You have to get the other one fixed too, so that the whole system works. So they'd have to engage another party to be able to do a fix as well. It's really complicated.
So is the other one failing as well?
Failing's a tough word to use. In disrepair is probably better for both of them, but yes, they're both in disrepair and would not pass inspections. So it's tricky. Taryn knows this, you know. I don't know what it's gonna, but you know, we're just gonna have to see what he comes up with to talk to us. It's way harder than it should be.
Yep.
It just is. You know, Rick and, you know, during the conscom meeting, they were like, all right, cover of darkness. We'll go out there with some 2x4s. And I was like, yeah, right? Because that's what they did 50 years ago. Right. Yeah. I know. No, that's what you want to do. Because it's like, but to get the actual permit to be able to fix it, you've got to make it compliant to, you know, Noah's flood. Right. So that's just what you have to do. Like, you don't get grandfathered into stuff like that when it has to do with dams specifically. So it's just pretty hard. So the process has just begun for them. We'll just try to support them as best we can.
Okay.
I just want to add that, you know, it looks like there's been a lot of work done behind the scenes here. So this is how my office engages with anybody who has a complaint like this, whether it be trash or the roads or the dam. So we just dig around and try and find answers for folks. And then when there's a decision point, we bring it to the board or when the resident wants to. So in case anyone's wondering, like, where did this thing come out of nowhere? It's because, you know, we're trying to help residents solve a problem, and that's what government does. Until we can't, and then they need to talk to decision makers like you. So just wanted to add that we do bring this stuff out when we can to have a public discussion about it.
And one other thing on it, just in case anyone else is watching eventually. So this has not been new. As I said, I consulted on it 5 years ago, and it's been around a while. Ann Goby and Donnie Berthium, so our state senator and state rep, were involved with sort of lobbying the Department of Fisheries and Wildlife, who's the owner of the dam, to fix it, basically, to get it to a point. And the engineers that were engaged to sort of assess it, that whole second dam thing came up at the time. So our legislators couldn't do all that much about it either, because there's a whole other entity that has to sort of be on board for the work. So it's a lot of people have already weighed in on this and tried. So you know, Taryn's got a tough battle here. So anyway, okay. All right. So our next one, again, we would need some other. It doesn't look like we have any other attendees here. Can you give us an update on the parks?
So Tom from Scanlon, our town auditor, is going to be here at 7:30. We've been trying to schedule this with parks, and I don't have a good answer on whether we're going to meet with them tonight or not. So I guess we move on until we see them.
Sounds good. So why don't we go then to I'm actually, if you guys don't have any problem with this, so 4D is the Board of Selectmen Town Administrator Goals Review. I want Chris around for this. You know, this was the, you know, the long conversation he and I had a couple of months ago on a Saturday, sort of going through our responsibility for following up on all these goals. And a few of them, you know, I'd like to have his input on that. So you guys mind if we just pass on this item tonight?
No, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, Ryan, you're part of this too. So you all right with that? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, I guess we'll go off to old business then, Ryan. Item 5A, the host community agreement, paper crane provisions.
Yeah. So a couple items here to update the board on. You helped host a community outreach meeting last week, or last meeting 2 weeks ago now. All the time seems the same. So I just wanted to show the board what we did in response to your requests last time. We've created on the planning board. So what you're seeing here is if you go to boards and committees on the town page and go to planning board, we've created a link here called marijuana establishments, and we're building this section out to try and add as much information as possible for residents. So we're going to continue to add to this page, but it'll be every license that's approved in town, where the project is, all the regulations that are pertaining to it. And this is what you specifically asked for last time, was some information about our community outreach meeting. So if you click on Hubbardston Community Outreach Meetings, did that jump? Are you guys with me?
Yep.
Okay. So this is from that meeting held on November 30th. It's a link to the video and then the Zoom chat transcript, as we told residents that we'd put up. And then we also, Bobby worked on this today, sent out, or we will be sending out a postcard to all residents telling them that this exists, this website, and that they can view it. And then we've committed to working with the applicants to make sure that a postcard goes out every time we have a community outreach meeting, just to remind people that this exists. So that was in response to some comments and concerns, and just generally good advice from the board and from residents saying, we want to make sure that this information is out there and not everyone is on Facebook. So we're putting it on Facebook. We're going to put it on the town site. We're going to send out a mailing every time we have a new outreach meeting, and then that's about the limit of our resources. So we'll just ask folks, if you're interested in a particular project, we'll continue to put information on this site, and you can follow along with its various permit applications and hearings. So Bowie did agree with me to give the town $3,000 up front to pay for this mailing that's going to go out, this first one, and for the host community agreement negotiations that we have to do for the courier license and the outdoor grow at 56 Gardner Road. So we've engaged counsel at cost of the applicant to get that host community agreement in front of you next time. It's going to be under this, you've empowered me to negotiate. It'll be the same parameters essentially that we did with the last host community agreements. And just to remind everyone, we don't have the ability to not to get into a host community agreement. We have an ability to change the parameters, but so do they. So this is just saying, if you bring marijuana to the town of Hubbardston, the Board of Selectmen says you can only do it under these financial parameters and restrictions. That's what the host community agreement is. The next step is to go to the planning board for site reviews, permits, and the applications for the physical buildings. And then it goes to the Cannabis Control Commission, who has the ultimate, that's a state entity, who has the ultimate authority. So the board is just saying you can start that process. And when you start that process, here's what you're going to owe us if you bring marijuana to our town. The rest of it is the actual permitting and whether or not it's going to happen in the town based off the bylaws that exist and the laws that exist at the state level. So that was just wanted to update the board on that community outreach that we're doing, in addition to where we're at with the host community agreement. So I'm fairly certain by your next meeting, we will have those two HCAs in front of you for deliberation, vote, and potential signature.
Following vetting by council?
Yes. So I've given her our parameters. We've already agreed to these. This is, the 3% community impact fee. On the retail side, it would be an additional 3% sales tax. So all the monies that were discussed at the community outreach meeting would be guaranteed. To include guarantees and minimums, if they don't hit them, we still get that money if they come into the town. So that'll be in front of you. I'll explain it in detail, vetted by council, and then the rest of the process will continue with the planning board as it is right now for the existing host community agreements that we signed last year, last fiscal year.
Okay, thanks for the update. So moving on, we're at the TA report, I believe. So it looks like we have probably time to get through it or most of it.
Pull that up for you. Okay, I want to show you some COVID numbers here, which has become, this is where we're trying to host this information. So it's the same spot in your meetings. So Hubbardston's a green community. In the newest public health report, which comes out every Thursday, we have a current case count of 12. So in the last 14 days, 323 residents have been tested with 13 positives. So cases are current cases in town. We have 12, but we've had 13 positives in the last 2 weeks and a 4% positivity rate, which is increasing and getting higher than it was. The context of these numbers matters, right? So you can only compare to where you were as a town and then your neighbors. So all of our neighbors are either in a red or yellow status. Let me show you the chart again. Did that jump to the chart?
Yes.
Okay. So this is what these colors mean. So Hubbardston has 12 current cases. So that's less than or equal to 15, but greater than 10, which makes us a green community. A couple of our peers are yellow, and then the majority of our peer towns or border towns are red, to include Gardner, who just closed their town hall and is seeing a spike in cases. Westminster's red, and just want to get this number right, put these words right here. Westminster, Gardner, and Rutland are all in red statuses, with Barry and Templeton in yellow. That doesn't mean that, you know, they're seeing massive amounts of cases. It means that on that chart, they're hitting those case numbers, and all of them are growing like we are. We seem to be growing lower than the rest of them, but that's not, you know, something that you can guarantee or even necessarily control unless people are following to a T the public health guidance that we've been giving. So we're being vigilant in the town offices. One case in town hall could shut down all of our operations, and we're very cognizant of that, which is why I've recommended a continued appointment only approach to visiting town hall. We've started sign-ins for close contacts. We're trying to encourage people to self-consent when they come in the building, meaning that they're certifying they have no symptoms, and we have thermometers available for them to check and make sure. We are really trying to hammer home that we are appointment only. So although there was some leniency in the summer, we have less and less of an ability to just let people come in the door. We need to make sure that the town continues to function, and that includes the police and the DPW, who are down folks right now. Any case in there would mean we don't have the ability to provide public safety the way we usually do, and we'd have to rely on someone else. So that's not good. So we are not trying to be alarmists or be overreacting. We're just trying to protect what we have and keep everyone as safe as possible while still committing to the services that we've been committing to. So that's our current stance. I'll show you here is the report so people can see it. Here's Hubbardson. Every town is detailed in this way. Here is our data. So there's not many green towns anymore or gray towns. Most people are trending towards yellow and red just because of the saturation of cases across the country. It just looks like, although we have a lot of good news with the vaccine, the predictions about winter case levels increasing is coming to fruition. Whether that is good or bad is up for interpretation. It's just here in data form for you to see it.
Boston, did you see Boston today?
I did not.
So they regressed. So they're back to phase 2, tier 2, which closes a whole lot of places again. That's in the city. So hopefully that doesn't go further, but that's a big deal.
Yeah. So COVID, right? It's a lot of fun. Continuing with my report. Is there any questions from the board? I know some of this stuff can be convoluted, or anything you want me to look into, any reaction to the recommendations I'm making. I communicate constantly with public health and public safety and try to communicate with the board. I just want to make sure all of our decisions are aligned. So this would be a good time to, I'm assuming they are, but if they're not, we could talk about it for sure.
Make it go away.
Okay. I think that would make me president, right?
You want that job?
No. All right. So I talked about how my family attended the light fight. This is the department report, part of my report. And again, just awesome seeing. I felt bad for the workers at the Pizza Palace, but also felt like this is what we're trying to do, is to get people to visit our businesses. So it was great. And the pizza was awesome and they were really nice. So my kids loved eating. We actually ate in the offices. They loved it. Bobby gave them way too much candy. She left it on the desk for them, but we had a good time. And I think that's what the light fight's all about. So Katie's going to be mad, but I'm voting for the fire department because I'm a municipal guy.
Whatever.
Got to stick up for my departments, but I encourage you to see the lights. They're amazing in every place. And my kids liked Katie's house the best with all the cows. So that's where we're at with that. Human resources. We are continuing to focus on all the human resources stuff, which has its certain level of excitement, but it's really important. So we are improving our leave accruals, aligning everything, union and non-union, and the unions have been great about that, which means we should be having a very easy to understand, efficient system moving forward and meeting some of these best practice recommendations that were given to us in our grant funded evaluation. And then I will be bringing for your review and vote the annual classification and compensation plan. So this is the non-union side of the house in terms of what we pay people. And the vote required there for you is, do you want to adjust the overall? So right now, people are moving through the steps, which is an easy to understand increase. Whether you want to add COLA or not to that scale is the decision. I'll have a lot more information for you on that, but I don't want to surprise you with it. And then, did you jump with me to the town website?
Yep.
Yes.
So we updated, this might not jump, but I will get it right up for you. Are you seeing a organizational chart?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is, I've updated this so people can better understand what can be very complicated, which is our town charter. So this is the town structure and where everything falls, who appoints who, who's in charge of what, and who's elected, who's not, etc. So some of the intricacies of our charter, you can see, like the library board of trustees controls their own staff. You control me, I control the staff, but you also control the fire chief, the police chief, and the constables. And then you appoint these people, but not these people who are elected. And this is just a visual interpretation of the charter. Just trying again to share information to folks so we can better understand ourselves. And some decisions that'll be coming up for you on, do we need all of these appointed boards and committees, and what should we do when there's a charter review, which we're due to do. And then the organizational chart, based off some of the changes that we discussed recently, just continuing to update our org chart so people can see and track our employee levels. I think that's really important in the budgeting process so that they can see if we're adding folks or not, because that's people's number one question is, are you adding staff, et cetera? We're just laying it out visually. And of course, we'll lay it out numerically as well. Okay, hopefully you're still with me on my report here. Okay, we're receiving our budget requests for FY22. They're pretty simple this year. We're asking people to level fund budgets unless they absolutely need something new because of COVID and financial forecasts you saw. So anything that comes new or increased in the budget will come with, this is why I need that, or this is why there's nothing I can do about increasing, which will of course help you. We also have tentative agreements with the chief of police and the DPW union, which I've been working with the board with, and also started negotiations with the police. It's been a great negotiation. They're a good group, and we should get through that soon. I'll have an update for you in our executive session. We are finalizing our tax bills now that the tax rate is set. That has been a focus of Sandy's, and we believe we'll get that done this week. And I presented the 5-year financial forecast to you tonight, and you will get the Capital Improvement Planning Committee's report at your January 4th meeting. They did a lot of great work. That's a great group. They're really dedicated to helping you make decisions about capital. And I think that's great. So infrastructure, we met with the Hubbardson Center School Roof Building Committee. Dan was there for this, offering some of his expertise and insight. We worked with the OPM or the OPM is working to assess the roof construction documents and revise cost estimates. So this will go next to the MSBA for review. And then we are looking, based on the timeline, to bid this project in April. So we will be looking to get the school roof done this summer. And it'll be one of the bigger projects we've done in a while. So looking forward to helping with that. And then I worked with the library trustees and the DPW this month to start assessing the library foundation. So the DPW dug some holes for us. We cut some holes into the interior of the building to see what's going on with the foundation. And the engineers are going to give us a report on what to do next. The good news is they're finding that the foundation is in decent shape, except for one spot. So this could be a small necessary repair, not a big structural repair like we feared might happen. So cautiously optimistic. And then for employee recognition, this meeting, I'd like to recognize our public safety departments for their holiday spirit, which sounds simple, but is really important this year, I think. So the police department is really doing well with their CHOP program. A lot of community donations. I saw a big one today from the Lions Club. I saw a donation from Bill Shea. And my kids were awed at the number of toys that are in the police department right now that they're going to be giving out to local children in need, which I think is amazing. The fire department's involved in that as well. And they're also continuing their socially distanced and responsible Santa parade, going to people's houses as is their common function with some restrictions based off COVID, but they're going to continue to do what they do every year, which is make people happy and see the good side of government. So that's happening on the 19th and 20th. So thank you to the public safety departments for their efforts. That is my report.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. You know, and we obviously echo your sentiments there. So we are at 7:32-ish, and we have, I think we have everyone we're supposed to have on here. We have Tom Scanlon. You want to make him a panelist? So the part that we're up to now is item 4C in our agenda, which is the fiscal year 20 audit review by Scanlon Associates, which we have visit us to go over what we've done right and what we've done wrong on an annual basis.
That me?
Yeah. So Tom, we don't always see you, the big boss. So if you just want to introduce yourself and just talk generally about the audit, and then let me know if I'm putting up documents or if you want me to make you a co-host.
I'm not putting up any documents, so you can put them up.
Okay.
You get that job. My name's Tom Scanlon. I'm the managing partner at Scanlon Associates. We specialize in municipal audits. We have roughly about 80 municipal clients. We don't do anything outside of municipalities, so we kind of specialize in there. I think this is our 8th year in Hubbardston. I think 2012 was our first year. And just as a general note, the audit went really smooth this year. We had no disagreements with management. We had no significant adjustments to the GL. It was very cooperative. This year was a little challenging, more than the rest because of COVID. We did a lot of work remotely. Then we came in increments of 2 people went to. So the staff was very cooperative in that, and that allowed it to go very smoothly. So I think staff should be commended for that. I know it's challenging when we're asking for documents that we usually copy ourselves and got scanned in and given to us. So that's always a good sign of a smooth operation at the financial level. I'll probably go over the financial statements first, real brief. That's the thicker one. On pages 3 and 4, that is the audit opinion, which we did give a clean opinion, which is good. That's what you want to see in the town. So when you go out and borrow in the bond market or applying for grants, that's the first place the users will look. So again, the town should be commended for that. And then as we go through, it's on pages 13 and 14. And governmental financial statements are kind of unique. They actually have 2 sets of balance sheets in them, 2 sets of P&Ls as compared to like a company or private sector. And on pages 13 and 14, these are your entity-wide financial statements. They take in the full accrual basis of accounting. You'll see fixed assets on here. Depreciation is recognized where you don't recognize depreciation in your budget. Kind of looks at the long-term effects of a town, where you sit. Kind of, as I say, the financial statements for accountants, basically. But as you look on page 13, your balance sheet, if you look under net position, you'll see Yep. Someone have a question? Good. You see under unrestricted, you'll see you never like to see a negative in your net position. When you see 1.5 million under unrestricted. The chief driver of that is if you look up the net pension liability of 3.6 million, that's what's driving that negative. You and everyone else in the Commonwealth are negatives. You're on a funding schedule with the retirement system. That's the assessment you get every year. So eventually that liability will go away. And what you don't see here is OPEB liability, which the town does not have an OPEB liability because you don't pay retirees health insurance to your retirees. They pay 100%. So usually if you look at other communities, they'll see even a bigger negative. Perhaps you've heard the term OPEB out there, which is other post-employment benefits. The reason why it doesn't sit on your balance sheet is because you don't have that liability. I don't know if any questions on these two financial statements. Like I said, they're really for accountants. On pages 15 and 16, this is really kind of the cash basis. It relates to kind of gives the current economic flow. You see on page 15, and we look at the general fund under unassigned. That's probably the most important number. That unassigned fund balance is really your free cash and your stabilization number together. This year, there was an accrual made for 6-day receipts, which is your property taxes that you collect in July and August. Most significant this year is with other communities due to COVID. People are paying after June 30, so that is also recognized. And that 1.2 million that you see there, bond rating agencies and other outside agencies, how they benchmark is a good benchmark is 10% of your budget should be unassigned fund balance, and I believe you're right at 12%. Year before, you're around 14, so it did go down a little bit. And now you can see that's on page 16. That's how the change in general fund. You see the total general fund decreased 280,000, which you don't want to see 3 years in a row. Usually is the trend of it. I think one is a unique situation of COVID. I think every town is in the same kind of situation. And you used your free cash, I believe, for a couple, I believe it was for highway construction, a couple one-time capital items, which is good use of free cash. You don't want to, free cash is non-reoccurring. You don't want to use it for reoccurring expenses. And then probably the most important financial statement is on page 19. And as we look at this, is kind of what generates your free cash. It's probably the most important statement as far as management goes. See, the top half is the revenues and the middle is the expenditures. The first column is what was carried forward from the prior year, the encumbrances, an original budget, and that's your final budget after all transfers. Then the fourth column is actual expenditures, actual revenues. And you see the top half, again, you're not meeting your revenues, which I know we've talked to the town personnel about it. And it's a factor of COVID, so we're not too concerned, but I think it's one of the items that I know Ryan was addressing in future budgets, and I'm really looking at your local receipts and how you're estimating them. You can see your biggest local receipt is your excise tax. And then the bottom half on your expenditures, you can see what contributed to your free cash is $267,970. So when you look at, I think your free cash, it was certified, I want to say 500,000, and then you used 190 of it at a special town meeting in September. So I think DOR certified around 315, if I'm not mistaken. You can see what 183 is what contributed to that certification. So I think it's always important to know how you're generating your free cash. You can see it's more on your expenditure side than it is on your revenue side. I think that's always important to know. And then when you look at why the decrease was, where you can see if you look to see how you funded your budget, under the final budget, all the way down, you see free cash and other reserves, 402,345. That's the amount of free cash that you used to fund this budget, and you generated 183,000. So that's the chief driver of the decrease that's over on page 16. That's where all the numbers come from. I think it's always good to the numbers when it's the stabilization fund, the free cash, to see them laid out in your financial statements, and it should give you confidence that the numbers that you're getting are coming right from your financial statements. I don't know if there's any questions. I don't know.
Yeah. So how many, Tom? How many? I'm not looking for exact numbers here, but we've been using, for a few years now, $100,000 out of free cash to help fund the operating budget. It's just sort of reality around here, as much as we try to avoid it. How in the 80 communities you've got, what sort of? I'm sure they're all different, but is there a bunch that do that?
Oh yeah, no, there's pretty much all of them do it. It's just a matter of, are you generating it back, which you can see if you're using 100, you're generating 267 of appropriations. So I think that's fine. And then you really look at the overall picture where you are, like how much levy capacity you have, what's in your stabilization fund. Are you using 100,000 of free cash, but you're putting 200 in stabilization fund. So I think you have a nice mixture. You can see you're on the signs at 12%. So you just don't want to start dipping way below 10% of those two figures.
Yeah.
Of stabilization and free cash. Yep.
And then just another question, I guess, about, so this year turned out, I think better is a wrong word, but better than we all thought.
Yep.
Just when we were all in the fog of what was going to happen financially,
Yep.
it was just very, very unclear, and it sort of went all right.
Yeah, no.
Just asking your opinion, for next year. Do you see, and I know I'm not asking you to predict the financial markets of the country, but what do you do? Are you in this business sort of seeing like a real blowback year coming?
Yeah, I mean, when this first started, 2021 was always my chief concern. That's where it's going to really hit, like the local revenues. But we've really been seeing it is in hotel, motel tax, and meals tax, and marijuana tax. And you don't have those; it's not chief drivers of your budget. So, I mean, obviously, your chief driver is property taxes and state revenue, your two biggest revenue sources. As long as people have the ability to pay and are paying your taxes, that's what you really got to keep on top of.
And
the
just
collection rate. Yeah.
And just to follow up to that, because so many other communities are reliant on those things that we're not necessarily, do you think that there's going to have to be like some other legislation passed that's going to sweep us into to help all of those communities that have that in? And I don't even know what I mean, but just something that we may just sort of be brought into because so many others have been struggling with that.
I hope so. I know when I first started my career, there was it was back late 80s. There's a thing called revenue sharing at the federal government level. I almost seen some portion of some remnants of that, some idea of that coming back at the end of all this. Because it's really it's a loss of revenue is where you're generating where it's hurting the cities and towns. It's not really the additional. It's not. I always compare it to when Hurricane Irene rolled through Western Mass here. There was towns that was out, $2 million from cleanup. You didn't really have that besides PPE. Those other expenses is really the loss of revenue is really driving it all. So I mean, 2021 was always my concern on it, and it's in when looking at your financial statements and looking at like your revenues, how you're setting it off of your budget. You don't have the I call them the big three that are really affecting it. It's really your property taxes, the state paying their, cutting their piece of it. They do, and then excise tax is really your residents having the ability to pay. And your collection rates drop, and that's where it would affect you the most.
Okay.
Hope that answered your question.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, so I said to Ryan before, prior to you coming on, you know, he had any questions for us, you know, about what to do about the pandemic, and I just said fix it. So same thing to you, just fix it.
Yeah. And also, I just, the other thing I just want to say, because I have experience of like 80 communities. I will say that Ryan is on top of it. He's really managing the town well. I think through all this financially, I mean, I don't know about the other end of it. I'm not into that, but financially, I feel like he's really on top of what's going on. So,
All right. Well, we're playing hardball in executive session tonight with his next contract. So, you know.
I didn't know that.
Thanks, Tom.
Hey, geez, if I knew that. You know, that's kind of it on the financial end. You know, you know, when it first started, I thought this was going to be a lot more devastating to towns in 20, but as we're going through the numbers, you know, we have about, I think we've started like 30 audits so far. The numbers are coming back, not as bleak as we thought. So, and then the management report, I just wanted to go over that real quick. You know, that's you're always going to see ways to improve. You're never going to see anything good in a management letter. But I will say the town has made with the accounting end of it and the treasury end of it, they improved tremendously their bank recons, which from an audit standpoint, we put a lot of emphasis on individual bank reconciliations and really collection rate at the collector's level, really into the detail. I mean, that's where really our focus is on there. And I know we pointed out last year, you know, the bank recons could use some improvement, and a lot of effort was put in. A lot of those little variances were cleaned up, and the bank recs are very clean now, which from an auditor looking at them, so the town should be committed in that regard. And we just had a couple recommendations, and really just to improve operational standpoint. The first one was year-end closing procedures. Is really putting procedures in place just to walk through like proof free cash before you submit to DOR. I think it'll help a lot. I mean, we do have this comment in a lot of our towns. Is really just to improve the overall efficiency of the whole process, just with, you know, DOR being overwhelmed, the town with the COVID. So, and we talked about this with Kelly, and she was on board with it, and I see it being implemented, so it shouldn't be an issue. And then the second comment we have is the town accountant signing the warrants. You know, one of the key controls is the accountants making sure the expenditure is posted to the right account, the funding is available, and it's reasonable. That is being done, but as proof from the outside that's being done, that the control is taking place, we like to see the town accountant signing them. I know Ryan's signing them too. That's the your charter allows him to sign that, but really the town accountant should be signing them too, just as proof that she's doing that. As we design our tests, I mean, we do a lot of analytical procedures on expenditures and revenues, and we rely upon controls. And so when we see like town accountant not signing like a certain warrant, we may go look at that warrant more closer. But when we looked, none of them were signed, and then it was just oversight. But so we recommend having her sign those. And then just some other areas. There's an older payroll outstanding checklist. You know, we'd recommend Sandy to close those out in fiscal year 21. And then, yeah, like I said, it was a very, very nice and refreshing audit to have over the past year. I don't know if anyone has any specific questions.
Okay, well, sorry, I was muted for a second there. I wasn't asking a question either, but I was thinking everyone was ignoring me. But no, I don't have anything further. I think the questions I had were sort of during it. Anyone have anything they want to ask Tom here about, you know, specifically Ryan's performance?
No, I'm
Hey,
good.
And if you guys have any questions throughout the year, if something comes up, if you have a question, like, either COVID funding or grant, don't hesitate to reach out. Because we kind of think the audit's like 365 days a year, not just 1 week that we're there. So
One thing Kelly brought to the team, and just want to make sure it's clear that Kelly and Sandy really drive these improvements and this changes. So Kelly brought some stability to our operations, really checklist things out and improve my knowledge, Sandy's knowledge, and then hers in this process. And also what she brought to us was just a stronger willingness to go to the auditors first and ask questions, which Tom has probably seen that we're doing now, which really makes the audit smoother. When I have questions, as you know, I'm learning still. He's been great in providing that, and Kelly really drives that. And Sandy has been laser focused. We added Bobby's position a little bit to alleviate some of the pressure of Sandy's position. And she's been able to really focus on reconciliation and making sure that because she was also learning too in the beginning of her appointment here, that her processes are running smooth. And that's really made a big difference. So having that team there, both of them focused on doing the right thing and being as transparent as possible and improving has made what Tom said happen, which is some improvements in the last couple of years. So just want to make sure the credit's getting where it's due on those two, with Bobby assisting them and the finance team in general guiding the process.
yeah, definitely I agree with that.
Okay, well, thanks for coming in, Tom. Appreciate the,
Yeah,
always, you seem very clearly you're gonna just be honest about, your opinion on things, so we can take it, and I'm glad it's, mostly good news this year, so I appreciate it.
Sounds good. Yeah, I had a long commute this year.
Thanks, Tom.
All right, thanks,
Yeah,
Tom.
Thank you.
have a good one. Yep.
Sure. All right, hey, Ryan, can you hear me? Where are we at, contract-wise with them?
So
Meaning, like, I can't remember. Is it annually? Do we do 3-year contracts, or how does that work?
we do an annual process. So reading into your question a little bit, we definitely committed to having them look at me and my financial management the same over 3 years, so you could see how that went. Because if you change auditors, you're going to change approaches, et cetera. So there's definitely a goal of mine to make sure the same person is monitoring my progress so that you can see that and the board can see that. And you probably should do it again for another year, but we are a year to year with them, whether we stay with that firm or not. And most towns stay with auditors for a little while just to get on track and then maybe bid it out or move forward. So that is a Board of Selectmen decision.
Yeah, we had a little hiccup a few years ago. I don't know if you heard that. We had to, yeah. Okay, well, sounds good. That went great. All right, moving on then. We were at policies to review, just a couple of them, which we've had, and they were in our packets there. Those are the human resources types of employees and the human resources vacation leave. You have those, you can just call them up. I know they're pretty short. Maybe we can just make sure everybody has taken a look at them and give them a quick run through again, just to see if anyone has any questions and then act on them.
So this is more, we're looking for you. I added some language to these policies to make them more clear and to correct one typo, which would make it very unclear. So I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. Under types of employees, we added this category of employees called part-time with leave benefits. So we wanted to make sure it's clear that although we want to take care of these employees with holiday leave and personal leave and a very, very prorated sick leave, they would not be eligible for vacation leave. So there was some remnants of an old copy and paste in there. None of the employees were under the impression that they were getting that because we were clear in the communication, but just want to make sure that the policy matched it. So taking out any reference under part-time with leave benefits for vacation leave. And then a similar adjustment was made under vacation leave policy. We added a sentence that says, that only these types of employees are eligible for this, and it excludes that part-time with leave benefits employee. So I'm looking for the board to support approving these two policies as presented in order to make sure we're as tight as possible with our HR policy.
Sure. So I'll make the motion to approve the HR policies as presented, the type of employees and vacation leave policies.
That,
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we will vote. Roll call. Dan, yes. Katie?
yes,
Pat?
Yes.
Okay, it's unanimous. Sounds good. We're at item 8, which is appointments and resignations. We have 3 of them. You've explained what's been going on and brewing relative to this, Ryan. Can you just remind us and others?
Yes, so we voted to release us in the town of Templeton from an IMA to share accounting services. So we've done that. We no longer share accounting services with Templeton as of December 30th. So starting January 1st, I'm looking to make the following, notify the board of the following appointments that have already been discussed at length with you. Kelly will stay on. When you heard a lot of good words about Kelly and why we would want to keep her as our accountant, 20 hours per week, which will give us a lot more accounting time and a really focus on hammering home these changes and stuff that we've done in the last few years. So she would be appointed as the town accountant. Bobby would be then appointed as a finance assistant to help with assessing, accounting, and treasurer collector. And then Christina, who was helping us with assessing, will move into the executive assistant role, no longer full-time, but part-time. And the net changes of all of this is a 0 change in budget. So just appointing these employees and asking you to waive your notification period, which we're giving you plenty of notice anyway, to appoint these folks on January 1st.
Sounds good. We can do them all at once.
Can we do, yeah, do them
Yes.
all? I'll make the motion to waive the notification period and appoint Kelly Pontbriand.
Pontbriand, yeah.
Christina Sutcliffe and Roberta Thibault as presented.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? So Bobby, we got one more meeting with you.
That
This is it.
This
This is the
is it?
last.
This is the last one?
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Great job. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, we'll vote. Roll call. Dan, yes. Katie?
Yes,
And Pat?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Well, we will see you in a different capacity.
is not going far. Same
I
desk.
know, especially for you, right? Okay, well, so wage authorizations, we've got a couple of those. We've got Mike Caruso, DPW driver laborer. That is a 6 month, is that right?
He's been with us for 6 months. DPW employees are on probation for a year, but at 6 months of their probation, they're giving a pay raise by contract if they meet expectations. And Mike has far exceeded expectations. A great hire, really hard worker. Hope he stays with us as long as he wants. He's going to be great.
Yeah, Travis gave a really thorough and positive review to his time there so far.
Yeah, he's just been everything you want in a DPW employee and more. So very pleased. And then for Kelly's wage authorization, this is to move from a contract to a paid employee. She will be part-time, full-time as we call it, or full-time with benefits at 20 hours, starting her out at the J7 rate on the compensation plan based off her extensive experience. It's something that we agreed upon with her. She will fall into all of the benefit categories that are involved in that, to include prorated time. And it's a steal. She's great.
Great. So can we do them both?
Yep.
I'll make the motion to approve the wage authorization for Mike Caruso and Kelly Pontbriand as presented.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, we will vote. Roll call. Dan, yes. Katie?
Yes,
And Pat?
Yes.
Okay, it's unanimous. To minutes, so just our last meeting, considering Bobby keeps up with these, meeting to meeting here. So we just have November 30th. Remind us, were we all there? I think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes of November 30th, 2020.
I'll second that.
Okay, seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote. Roll call. Dan, yes. Katie
Yes.
and Pat?
Yes.
Okay, it's unanimous. Committee updates, item 11, just a quick one. So our 100% design for the Town Center Committee went in on October 9th. That was a 60-day review supposed to be with Mass DOT. Again, this is 100% from our engineers to Mass DOT. But because of COVID holidays or whatnot, that could extend it a little bit. But so it would have been December 9th. Mass DOT has gotten back to us recently. They're going to be completing their 100% review by December 31st. So pretty soon we'll get that. And then there's some easement stuff that has to go on. Anyway, no changes really, just an update. I updated the Town Center Committee a week or two ago on this information. We have moved it from monthly, a year ago to quarterly meetings. We had one in maybe September. I pushed it off. We're not going to have December, but maybe we'll have some comments back from that in the first quarter of 2021. So we'll probably have another meeting then. So I will report back at that point. Any other committee updates anyone wants to add here?
No, Ryan already talked about everything that for the CIPC and the EDC. So we have another meeting coming up soon for the EDC and the CIPC too, next week, right? 22nd? Yeah. So hopefully everything's going smoothly. The meeting that I was just listening on, that one went well. I think they have a very good handle on that. And the EDC has come up with some really good rephrasing and question asking about some interesting policies that we could take a look at and that might help drive some businesses into town, whether it be out of your house or possibly expanding some stuff. So we're looking at what the public has to say about it. So we created some interesting questions and I'm curious to see how they come back. So yeah.
Okay, great. Item 12 is matters not reasonably anticipated by the chair. I don't have any. Anything else anyone wants to bring up here? Nope. Okay. So we're going to be heading after this next item, which is public press question and answer, which I don't think is anything. But after that would be an executive session item where we'll be going into executive session without the intention of coming back into open session. So any public press question and answer, Ryan, either during this meeting before that we need to bring up?
No.
No? Okay. Well, somebody want to, there is a executive session agenda item that's there. Somebody want to make the motion and read that verbatim to send us in there, or at least to vote to decide whether to go in there?
Yeah, I'll make the motion to adjourn this meeting and go into executive session under general law, chapter 30A, so section 21A 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on bargaining or litigation position of a public body, and the chair so declares.
Hi, Claire.
New England Police Benevolent Associate Incorporated Local 092 and Town of Hubbardston Police Department Teamsters Union Local number 170 in the Hubbardston DPW and Town Administrator Ryan McLean, with no intention of coming back to open session, right?
Right.
I'll second that.
Okay, seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, so we'll vote roll call to go into executive session. Dan, yes. Katie?
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
All right. Ryan, you want to